Folks, a couple months ago when Street Fighter 6 was still a pretty new game, I made this video called Why Blocking is Better Than Parrying Usually. And, since Street Fighter 6 has been out, the game has changed a little bit, and I feel like parrying in this game has ended up being stronger and more ubiquitous than a lot of people, myself included, expected. So today, I wanted to do a bit of a revision here. I wanted to talk about what I got wrong in that original video, what I got right, and overall my thoughts on the state of parry and perfect parry in Street Fighter 6, whether I think it's strong, whether I think it potentially even needs nerfs, because that is one thing that people are starting to talk about now. So if you haven't been paying too much attention to tournament matches of the game, let me just show you an example. Here is Kakeru playing at the Gamers 8 Invitational, and watch how well he uses parry.
Beautiful. Oh, that was lovely. And again, Kakeru's just got such fantastic timing on these parries, whether it's a perfect parry or just a parry dealing with pressure. Unbelievable, and he's showing completely different looks here with these normals. No, not again. He goes to the well again, and the Kakeru perfect parry is going to be enough to close out with the level 1.
So as you can see, Kakeru is extremely effective at landing perfect parry, and if you guys don't know, perfect parry is a 2-frame window, which means 1/30th of a second. You can see I'm struggling to even get it right now. There it is. So the only way that you get a guaranteed combo off of a parry is if it's a perfect parry. So 1/30th of a second, I thought, and a lot of people thought, that this was going to be pretty rare, that you'd be landing, 1 or 2 per round tops. It's going to be really hard, but people are getting really good. I feel like this happens all the time in fighting games, where stuff that feels impossible execution wise ends up being doable. But like, if you've ever tried parrying in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, that's a 10-frame window, and it still feels pretty tough. So it's really mind-blowing to me how good the top players are getting at landing these perfect parries and how consistent they're doing them. It's not like every single time they parry it's a perfect parry, but it's at least like 25%, 30, maybe even 50% success rate of perfect parries, depending on the move the opponent uses. So that was the first thing I got wrong. I really did not expect perfect parry to be landed so consistently, and perfect parry is really the only way that parry becomes really strong, because if you also don't know, if you parry a move and you don't get perfect parry, it's actually the same frame advantage as if you block it. So you can see I'm +1 on parry, and I'm also +1 on block. So I don't get anything for normal parrying this. You can see Chun is completely safe on normal parry, exactly the same as she would be if I blocked it. So perfect parry is really where the juice comes in, and this is what is kind of making parry a very sort of dangerous, perhaps potentially overtuned mechanic in Street Fighter 6. All right, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of things I got wrong, there was one thing I said that was just straight up incorrect. It wasn't like an opinion, it was just I was wrong about how the game works, which is I said that you're actually in vulnerable recovery if you whiff a parry, which is not exactly true. So when you whiff a parry and you go into these recovery frames, you can see the frames where Ryu is no longer blue, he's no longer parrying, and you're locked out of most actions during this. So you can't do attacks during this animation, obviously. You cannot tech throws, so if the opponent throws you during this, they will get a guaranteed punish counter. There is no way to tech that throw. And you're locked out of any kind of movement as well. So you can't, jump or walk or backdash or anything like that during these recovery frames. But you can block. There is a special rule that you are actually allowed to block during this animation. So you can see, basically, no matter what I do, no matter how badly I time this parry, I am always going to be allowed to block during the recovery. So parry, it's still not completely risk-free, because yes, you cannot tech throws during parry recovery, so they'll get a punish counter throw, which does a lot of damage, so you don't really want that to happen. And obviously, if you whiff a parry, you lose some drive gauge. So those are the main risks of whiffing a parry, is you might get thrown and you might lose some drive gauge, but really that's not that bad. But when you think about the upside of perfect parry, if you manage to get this tight timing, you essentially get a full combo, right? Yes, it is extremely scaled. It doesn't do that much damage, but it's still really, really powerful to get that combo because you're going to push the opponent to the corner. You might get a knockdown into an Okizeme situation. You can do stuff like perfect parry and then back throw to throw them into the corner. So there are major, major benefits to hitting a perfect parry that really seem to outweigh the downsides of, you know, this very slight risk of getting thrown or just losing some meters. So yeah, the risk reward right now feels very skewed in favor of parry. And yeah, if you mess up, you know, all you really are going to happen, worst case scenario usually is going to be you just block, which you were going to do anyway, or, you know, you get a normal parry, which is essentially the same as blocking, but it's actually even better because you don't take any chip damage to your drive gauge if you land a normal parry. So yeah, the risk reward I think is a lot better than I thought and a lot better than most people thought on perfect parry. And then the final thing that I think I was not really aware of for parry that ended up surprising me was just how many moves in Street Fighter 6 only really have parry as an answer. So there's quite a few moves in this game that are very, very strong, and the only serious way to deal with these moves is usually parry. So Ken Dragon Slash Kick I think is one of the most famous examples because Ken is considered one of the best characters in the game right now. This move is very hard to stop. Like, yeah, you can dragon punch it, you can like interrupt him with a button, you know, but as you can see, the timing is quite hard. You have to be like really, really ahead of the game, which is going to be an impossible reaction most of the time. So it is really, really hard to actually stuff out this move, but you can perfect parry it. And of course you will get a full combo. So yeah, perfect parry is a really essential move in this matchup because that is going to be your absolute best answer for this move. Nothing else that you can do is as reliable as perfect parry. Even though it's a 2-frame window, it is just so important to fish for these perfect parries against Ken to dissuade him from doing the Dragon Slash Kick. Probably the most famous move that you're really supposed to parry, like that's the only good way to deal with it, is Honda Headbutt, man. Honda Headbutt is just completely crazy, man. It's completely safe on block. It is really, really hard to drive impact. You know, if you're like even slightly late on drive impact, Honda has plenty of time to recover and drive impact you back. Like seriously, by far, the most effective counter to this move is perfect parry because you're going to get that full combo. You're going to send Honda far away where you can start bullying him with fireballs or whatever your character wants to do. Even though the damage is not that much off the perfect parry, it is still definitely worth it. And the risk reward of parrying this move, there's essentially zero risk, right? Because if you get a normal parry, like that's fine. It's essentially the same as blocking, except it's better because if you block the headbutt, you lose an entire bar of drive gauge. And if you're, you know, too late, you just automatically block, right? If you're too late on the parry, you're holding back anyway, so you'll just block. So it's not a big deal at all. So yeah, like perfect parry, definitely the answer to headbutt in most situations. And then finally, there's fireballs, right? This one may seem obvious, but fireballs in this game, if you guys don't know, fireballs in this game are actually insane. In terms of frame data, the speed of the fireball, stuff like that, fireballs in this game are much, much stronger than they were in 5, and they're probably honestly the strongest they've been in like over a decade. Fireballs are ridiculous in this game, but they're balanced by the fact that we have parry, right? So this is another situation where there's really no risk for parrying this. And if I manage to get the perfect parry, that's just beautiful. I can get like a punish, you can dash after perfect parry and stuff like that to get in. So yeah, perfect parry is really, really essential for dealing with fireballs, and it's really like one of the only ways that fireballs are balanced in this game, because characters like Chun-Li, Guile, even Ryu, you know, people say Ryu is low tier, but his fireball is really good, man. His fireball is insanely good, but it is somewhat balanced by the fact that we have parry. So yeah, to recap, the things I was wrong about, I think parry is safer than I thought. I think people are better at landing perfect parries than I thought. And I think the risk reward of parry in general is a little bit more weighted on the reward side. The risk is not that extreme most of the time. But let's talk about what I was right about. So is blocking better than parrying, right? I mean, that was the subject of the video, is that most of the time blocking is better than parrying. I think depending on the definition, you could say that that's still true, because if you just count in an average match how many moves does a player block versus how many do they parry? They block a lot more, right? And the reason for that is that you can block while moving backwards. Blocking has no recovery, so you're essentially just like option select blocking all the time. Blocking also allows you to do a late tech option select. So if you don't know what I'm doing, I'm essentially pressing throw tech late after blocking, so I'll automatically tech the throw, but I'll also automatically block her low there. So that's a powerful option select for avoiding getting thrown. And you can't do that with parry, because parry has recovery. You'll just get thrown out of it. You can't input your throw tech. So does that mean that blocking is better than parrying if you block more times around than you parry? I don't really know, because like, for example, Zangief, he uses standing medium punch more times per round than he uses spinning pile driver. He might only spinning pile driver like a couple times per round if he's lucky, but he probably uses standing medium punch like a dozen times a round. So does that mean medium punch is better? Not necessarily. It's just that you get more opportunities to use standing medium punch because, you know, it's a more applicable move. You can use it at all kinds of ranges. You can use it, you know, off of drive rush and stuff like that. Whereas you can only land spinning pile driver in very specific situations when you're like point blank next to the opponent, which doesn't happen that often because, you know, you're Zangief. They're going to be running away, right? So I think that's kind of comparable to blocking versus parrying, right? You get a ton of opportunities to block. Like, you're just blocking all the time, you know, just by holding down back or holding back, you're just passively blocking all the time. So you're gonna block a lot of moves without even trying to, like, it just happens, right? Whereas parry, you kind of need to see the move coming. You kind of need a move that is reactable, that you can respond to with parry, which doesn't happen as much. So you get less opportunities to land perfect parry, but obviously perfect parry gives you a big reward. It gives you a free hit. So yeah, perfect parry, huge reward, but you land it less often, whereas, you know, similar to SPD, huge reward to land it, but you're not going to land it as often as you are just like a normal that you can, you know, poke with and land all the time. So yeah, and like if we think about it, if we gave Chun-Li spinning pile driver, she'd probably be broken. She'd be like the best character in the game if we just added this move to her move list. But if we gave Chun-Li Zangief standing medium punch, would that improve the character? Like, it probably wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't buff her at all. So yeah, in a way, pile driver is a better move than medium punch, and I feel like it's kind of the same with parry, right? Just because you don't land it as much as you land block, I don't think means that it's worse. I think in some ways it's better. I think parry might be better than blocking, but it's a hard comparison because, you know, you are just gonna block all the time anyway. Like, it's not to say that because parrying is better than blocking, you just shouldn't block. Like, no, you should block a lot too, but just parry at the right time. That's the big thing, I guess. Hopefully that analogy made sense. I feel like I kind of went off on like a tangent here, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. Like, parry is extremely strong, but block, you're just gonna get more opportunities to land it. Block is more applicable. It's just that it has less of a reward for doing it. So this brings us to the final question. Is parry okay? Is parry okay the way it is in Street Fighter 6? I don't know, guys. I'm not fully convinced, but I'm starting to wonder if maybe parry needs a nerf. Because if you watch high level play, they're just parrying all the time. Is that really the game we want to play, where people are just guessing wake up parry like so many times in all kinds of situations? I don't know. And do we also want a game where there are certain moves that are insanely powerful unless you are a good enough player that you can land the 2-frame perfect parry, right? Is that really a healthy game for newcomers? Like, you know, newcomers might get turned off when they fight Honda. I'm just saying. So yeah, I'm not sure, but how would we even nerf parry? If we wanted to, hypothetically, what would we change about parry? Because I don't think we can make perfect parry window smaller, right? It's already 2 frames. What are we gonna do? Make it 1 frame? That's just ridiculous. They can't do that, right? And they can't like give you less reward on perfect parry. It's already omega scaled when you land perfect parry, so they can't make it scale more or anything like that. So I don't know. So a couple ideas I had. One idea I had was, what if parry recovery, like, remember how I said originally that you can't block during parry recovery? What if you couldn't block lows during parry recovery or something like that? So if you expected someone to whiff a parry, you could hit the recovery by hitting a low, just to add a little more threat to whiffing parry. Because I do feel like it's not great that the only counter to parry is throw, right? Literally the only move in the game that beats parry is throw, right? To me, that's a little limiting. So I feel like if they mistime a parry, maybe there should be a way to punish them. That's just a thought that I had other than throwing them. Or the other potential nerf, and I don't think Capcom would do this because this would be a huge change. They'd have to rethink a ton of stuff. But what if we just went back to there being standing and crouching parry? What if we just had to guess high-low like we did in Third Strike? And then they could increase the perfect parry window, right? Then they could make the perfect parry window 4 frames or something, 5 frames maybe. Because then you still have to at least guess right high or low. You know, well, how do we feel about that? I'm not saying they should necessarily make this change. I'm not even saying that they should necessarily nerf parry. I'm not convinced it needs a nerf, but I'm starting to think about it, right? The game is not even that old. The game is what, like 2 months and change old? If the game keeps developing like this, eventually our match is just going to be parry fest back and forth. Are people going to be afraid to do any special moves because they might get perfect parried and punished for it? Like, that doesn't sound fun. Part of the fun of Street Fighter is doing your special moves. So yeah, I don't know if that's an ideal world where people are just parrying everything. So yeah, I think maybe Capcom should look it over. They should think about it and decide, is the game in a good place right now with parry? Is it too strong? Do they need to do something to it to make it a little bit more risky to use? But I'm curious what you guys have to say down in the comments. Hopefully you guys are cool with me basically making a video where I talk about stuff that I got wrong. Hopefully you don't lose faith in me. I'm a human. I make mistakes like anybody else. And I think it can always make for a good learning experience to talk about this kind of thing. So what do you think about parry? You think it's in a good place? You think they should just leave it alone? Let me know what you think. And with that, I'm going to end the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.